Hi, I'm Natalie Portman, and I am so thrilled to be here moderating today's Little Fires Everywhere SAG Awards Q&A with two of my dear friends, brilliant actresses and producers, Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington. Before we get started, though, let's take a look at one of the best moments from the Emmy-nominated limited series.
And she really doesn't leave a baby alone in the cold in front of a fire station.
You didn't make good choices. You had good choices. Options that being rich and white and entitled gave you.
Again, that's the difference between you and me. I would never make this about race.
Elena, you made this about race when you stood out there in the street and begged me to be your maid.
This is not working out. I think this is going to be your last day.
You think?
Is this all just a plan with you and Bibi to worm your way into our lives to get to Mirabelle? Why did you even take this job?
I took this job to protect my kid.
From what?
From you.
I thought we were friends.
White women always want to be friends with their maid. I was not your maid, Elena, and I was never your friend.
The crazy thing when I watch that clip is the hilarity to me that I feel like I made one of the closest friends of my life making that show, like that we became such good friends and that I just adore this woman so much. So I'm like, stop fighting when I watch that scene.
Yeah, it's so hard to say horrible things with people you love in real life.
Or maybe it's kind of easier because we know we love each other. And I was like, be meaner to me.
It's so true. It's so true. Come on.
Handle it.
You both were both acting and producing on the show, executive producing. How did you approach it differently from those two roles you took on?
Well, I feel really lucky that Kerry and I got to produce it together because it is such an incredible book that we were adapting, but we also, really changed a lot of the stories to make it really come alive and feel very contemporary. And it was very, very hands-on, the process of going through scripts and the shooting, and Kerry was incredible with helping us with the kids' performances, and because she's a director as well.
Not officially on this, but
no, but it helps to have that directorial eye in the room, and it was a really successful partnership because we both carried water together.
Yeah, that partnership is so. Reese always says there's power in partnership, and she exemplifies that so well. And it's just a joy, because Natalie, you've worn so many hats when you do projects, and sometimes you really do have to take one hat off to put another one on. And so to have a sister there with you to be able to hold that space while you're focusing on something else is just so meaningful. Yeah,
I can only imagine getting to work together in that way. Did you learn new things about each other?
Yeah, I feel like, I want to say that even the three of us got to know each other a couple of years ago in one of the most, getting to know and spend time with you guys in 2017, 2018 was a huge life-changing thing for me.
When I get to spend more time with any of you up close, it just multiplies all of those feelings for me because we are all so busy. And so when we have those times when we get to be like really, hands dirty in the trenches together, it just fills me up. It just fills your well to be able to have a sister in arms in that way.
Yeah, it absolutely feels like whenever you're tired, you can look to your left and your right and see people doing so much, so incredibly, and be so inspired. I know I am all the time by you, Kerry, and you, Reese. So the show is so much about motherhood, and so many strong women were working both in front of and behind the camera. What was it like being on such a female-centric set?
Really felt like a team of women coming together. It was just beautiful. It was beautiful. And one of the things I love is Liz Tigelaar, who's our brilliant showrunner. She actually really had an eye toward the lived experiences of the show in so many ways, right? So we had a lot of really strong women's voices, but she also was thinking about race. We had Asian women in the writer's room and Black women in the writer's room. We had a guy in the writer's room. We had people who were adopted in the writer's room. We had people who were from Ohio. Like, she really wanted to have all of those lived experiences be part of what added to the authenticity of the show. And so it was great.
I think that's important to mention too, because there were a lot of mothers in the room. And I do think motherhood is a great equalizer. It doesn't matter where you are in your life status, class-wise, race-wise, the ferocity of feelings you feel about your children and the choices you make for them are just so, that's the commonality between all of us. We will fight to the end for our children.
And the powerlessness, right? Also, like, no matter what choices you make or how hard you work or what your vision is, from the moment they leave your body, if that's your path to motherhood, but it's just like an ongoing process of individuation and letting go. Like, we're just constantly letting go.
Yeah, I think so. And the fear of, am I doing this right?
I feel like the answer is like, you're never doing it right, right?
That's right. We're all doing it wrong. We're all doing the best we can. We're all doing it wrong in various ways.
Especially when they're teenagers, you're definitely doing it wrong. And then when they're like 22, 23, they're like, oh, it was fine. It was fine.
Yeah, that's good perspective to have. How did you incorporate some of the themes from the book into this, into the screenplay? And then why did you make the changes that you made?
Well, Mia's race wasn't specified in the book. And the book doesn't really talk about race in America, it's more about class in America and how we divide ourselves based on what we perceive as upper, middle, and lower class. So that was a whole new element that Liz and the writers brought to it. And it deepened the experience of the show because we got to talk about so many different issues. You didn't feel like you were, talking inauthentically about characters' experiences. Every word of dialogue was so well thought out.
How was it dealing with race and privilege? What was it like to depict that, especially since it's like a period piece in the 90s and we're dealing with it so, so viscerally right now?
Well, I want to say it's so interesting to me. Like, it was Reese and Lauren, her producing partner, Lauren. They had this idea of asking me to play Mia, which I'm eternally grateful for the rest of my life. But when we met with Celeste said that in her mind, Mia was a woman of color, but that she didn't feel like she had the, that it wasn't her position to write a different race. Like, she didn't feel like she wanted to sort of take on that voice officially because she didn't have access to it. And I do think one of the things that was really fun was figuring out, even with Reese and I, like, what was your family talking about in the 90s, right? Because there was a moment where she was saying, like, we didn't really talk about that in the 90s. And I was like, we did, because, and that also opens up a new level of like, oh, let's talk about that privilege means that some people didn't have to be thinking about those things and other people were, and what that means and but we didn't use the same language. Like, nobody was saying intersectional in the 90s. So you have to find, like, what were the words that we had then?
Right. Yeah, that was a really great experience too, because Kerry and I were basically reflecting that we were playing our mothers, because our mothers were raising teenagers in the 90s. Right. And I was like, where I grew up, we did not talk about white privilege. That wasn't even something people said. You just had what you had. Oh, people said colorblind all the time. It was supposed to have meant that, you just didn't see race. Well, that was just a bizarre concept, that completely denied people's heritage. And I don't know, there was just all these disparities. And Kerry was like, well, we talked about white privilege in my house.
Because we didn't have it.
Because it does show you what has changed and grown. Our consciousness has shifted, but when in practical terms of how people are living their lives, what has shifted. So you get to kind of, as the viewer, look at that through that lens.
Kerry, you've been so prolific this year with Little Fires Everywhere and American Son and The Fight, and they all deal with really important issues. Where do you see the kind of intersection between entertainment and activism?
Reese is just a phenomenal producer, period, end of story. But because Reese is a woman, the headline is so often that it's about women, that it's about a woman, that she's breaking ground as a woman. And I don't mean to be speaking for you, Reese, but she centers women's stories. And even though that's just like where she's drawn, it's almost seen as a political act within the business, right? It's a radical act to center women's stories when it's just who she is. And I think it's true for me, like as a Black woman, whenever I center the things that matter to me as a person who's marginalized, being, bringing my full self to the table is seen as political. Because I'm bringing light to folks who are pushed into the sidelines, into the dark corners. I'm always like, I don't want to pick things to like be on a soapbox and say like, I'm going to do this project because I have something to say. I just want to be like always bringing my full self and my life experience and the things that matter to me forward. Because I feel like it serves two purposes. Like there are going to be people who, when I do that, see themselves and know that their stories matter in a larger cultural context. And also people who will be privy to stories that they otherwise would never have had access to, and to be able to like step into the other is such an important practice.
We can't help being political because our bodies are politicized. It's and in different ways, of course. But Reese, you have become just such a powerful producer. You have Big Little Lies, The Morning Show, and Little Fires Everywhere this year. What do you feel is your responsibility in bringing female stories out there? Like the characters are so uncompromising. And what is your goal in the kinds of characters you want to show people?
I just, it just seems like what Kerry said, it's so natural. I mean, we're half the population, but we're not half of the content that gets made at major studios and on streamers. I do feel like it's starting to change a lot, but I think representing different ideas, because a story told from a woman's perspective or a woman of color is a completely different story than that same story told from a man's perspective. And all three of us grew up in a Hollywood that really had the same 20 to 30 white men making this movies over and over and over and over again. And it just didn't represent our hearts, our minds, our journeys as women, as mothers. And it's so nice, I think, with the emergence of streaming platforms and a higher consciousness to have better representation and storytelling. I think we're seeing better stories.
The extremely talented filmmaker Lynn Shelton passed away earlier this year. And I know she played a really pivotal role in the series. So maybe you can talk about what it was like to work with her and what impact she had creatively on the show.
Oh, Lynn, we had a really tough problem to solve in looking for our directors on this project, because we were trying to tell so much story about so many different kinds of people. It was such an ambitious project, and we were terrified in looking for directors. And Lynn walked in the room and solved our problem. Like, she fixed it. She brought this beautiful book. She had this bound book of images that were like, oh, this is the visual language of our film. We're good. And her whole heart, like when you watch the show, it's Lynn's whole heart. We're so lucky that we got to work with her. So blessed. And I know that she is such an inspiration for so many independent filmmakers in particular. And I'm really grateful that this project is part of her legacy, because her commitment to staying, independent and raw and like real, bringing that energy into this streaming series, limited series, it really benefited the project. And I think it really affirms the need for women's voices and for women's independent voices to remain theirs, you know?
Yeah, I will just say yes. And she just loved actors and loved performance. And that was above everything. So many wonderful conversations with like really charting the journey of Elena Richardson for me, not coming out of the gate too strong. How am I going to get to this sort of ending that's very heightened in a authentic way? And then just watching her work with the teenagers. They're incredible young performers, but some of them had never been on a set before. So that's a whole other set of responsibilities to bring them into their bodies and let them relax. She was incredible.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, what do you see for the future of storytelling for all the actors watching here, and your kind of advice to the actors who are on this?
Only work with your really dearest friends.
If you can.
Once you've established yourself and you have the ability, only work with your very dearest friends. No, I have to say it is a privilege of a lifetime that I get to work with Kerry, that I got to collaborate with Natalie. I've gotten to collaborate with Nicole Kidman and Laura Dern, and people who there's just life as we've experienced this year is so precious. And each one of our experiences is so precious. And I feel, now I'm going to get misty, but I feel enormously grateful to be on this earth with these women who are storytellers at this moment. Because I think we're here to lift each other up.
Same. Lift each other up, and remember, it's never a zero-sum game. Like, because somebody else gets doesn't mean you don't. It means you keep getting together and creating opportunities with and for each other. And that can happen at every stage, you know?
That is so wonderful. Well, thank you both for this incredible piece of art that you both made and contributed to with so much heart. And I'm so happy to talk to you both too. I miss you.